Okay, welcome back. So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about Handout 6B. So we don't need our PowerPoint. We're just going to go right into Handout 6B, which is going to talk a little bit more about bone histology. This one is going to focus on bone structure with long and short irregular bones. So if you look at our handout, the first thing I want to talk about are long bones. Long bones are made out of, or I should say they contain certain structures that we need to know a little bit further on in this chapter. So a long bone would be any bone that's long that has a shaft, like your femur, your radius, your ulna, basically all of the bones of your appendicular skeleton that make up your arms and legs are considered long bones. All right. Then further on down, we have flat, short, and irregular bones. These bones are going to make up bones of your skull, your vertebrae, your ribs, all the short little bones in your carpals, your tarsals, your metacarpals, your metatarsals, your phalanges, your scapula. These are flat, short, and irregular bones. So we're going to talk about their structures. Now, let's first go to the long bone. A long bone, like a femur, is going to have certain characters that we need to describe. So see, this is the head of a femur right here. And so you can see, like, here's the head with the ball for the ball and socket joint. Here's the greater trochanter. Lesser trochanter is down below. But long bones all have what are called a diaphysis. The diaphysis is the shaft of the bone. So the bone length is called the diaphysis. It's the shaft. The two ends, the head and then the distal end of the long bone, are both called the epiphyses or an epiphysis. They're the ends of the bone. So if you look at this diagram here, I've got the diaphysis, this long shaft, and then the head of the bone is called the epiphysis. Now the epiphysis contains epiphyseal plates, and you can see the epiphyseal plate. There's two of them in this diagram. These are your growth plates. So when we are adolescents, all of the bone growth is going to happen at these epiphyseal plates. They're going to make the bone grow, all right, and make the bone longer and bigger around. Now, once we are done growing, this epiphyseal plate is going to turn into the epiphyseal line. So in an adult like me, who's old, you can see the epiphyseal line, but there's no more growth there. And so the plate turns into this line. So I just wrote that it's the adult plate with no growth. Now, if we look at the diaphysis itself, the diaphysis is going to appear to be hollow. It's actually not hollow. It's filled with yellow bone marrow in a living bone. So it is not hollow. But it does have this cavity that contains all that bone marrow called the medullary cavity. And the medullary cavity runs the entire length of the diaphysis. On the outside part of the bone that you touch is called the periosteum. So that's the outside of the bone. And then on the inside of the medullary cavity, we have another layer called the endosteum, which is the inside layer. So we have the inside layer, and then we have the outside layer, named periosteum and endosteum. So this is just a typical setup for all of our long bones. All of our long bones are going to have a diaphysis, the shaft, and then their two ends are going to be the epiphysis. So whether we're talking about the femur or the tibia, the fibula, the humerus, ulna, radius, they all have these characters. Now, that doesn't make up a lot of our bones. Most of our bones are either going to be flat, short, or what we call irregular bones. So flat bones like our scapula, short bones like all of our phalanges, metacarpals, tarsals, patella, And then the irregular bones are going to be all those crazy shaped bones like the temporal bone in our skull, the sphenoid bone, the ethmoid bone, vertebrae. These are the irregular bones. They don't have a diaphysis, nor do they have an epiphysis. What they are just a sandwich of bone tissue that make up their structure. So it says they're a sandwich of compact bone. That's going to be this dense bone on the outer layers. And then in between that compact bone is going to be spongy bone that has lots of spaces. Now in the next handout, I will talk about what the difference is between compact bone and spongy bone. So that's coming up. But if you look, see these flat, short, and irregular bones are made up of just a sandwich of bone. There's no bone shaft that makes a diaphysis. They also do not have an epiphysis. So these bones are a little bit different. All right, this was short and sweet, but it takes care of handout 6B. And we'll be ready to move on here to handout 6C. All right.